back. Home Tour Podcast, episode 25. Today, y'all, we got something different for you. We're going to be talking about overcoming fear and that ever looming imposter syndrome. I'm Tyler Willis, Tyler Willis Media. It's a little different now, so thank you, Eric Schleppian, for the help on that one. I'm going to kick it over to Payton. Payton, what you got going on over there?
Hey guys, it's Payton with Payton Peoples and Company, Keller Williams Realty Atlanta Partners.
It's Megan with CrossCountry Mortgage out of Peachtree City. Yeah.
And
It's one of those days.
Christian at CrossCountry Mortgage with the non-contingency plate on my car now.
Heck
I love it.
yeah.
I love
That's awesome. No contingencies. I love it. The biggest thing that this is throughout this topic to the group, and we were all like, yes, we got to talk about it. Overcoming fear. So it's one of those things that as soon as it gets in your head, it can just run rampant. So like we are all going to kind of take it from a different perspective. We'll talk about it personally, professionally, how dynamics can play in between all that. And then we're going to touch a little bit on imposter syndrome. Okay, let's take it from the real estate side first.
Okay.
Client comes to you on the sales side. They have fears. Buyer comes at you with fears. How do you overcome that to help them not panic? So we'll start there.
Yeah. I think a lot of it has to do with effective communication and education. So if you can't combat fear with fear or fear with questions, you can't talk someone out of that, you'll just have them spiral into something worse. So what I have figured out works the best way is to help them identify what the fear is through effective communication skills, and then be able to educate them on, well, now that we've identified what that looks like and what that means, here's what that looks like. Like, let's lay out all the details. Let's put everything out on the table so that, because, you know, you're going to have clients in our field that some don't care. Some don't have fear. Some are just like, I just need you to do your job so that I can keep doing my job. You know, stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine. And those are the best kinds of clients sometimes. But then you could also have the clients that want to read every fine print detail of every single thing and ask 5 million questions.
Yep.
And the entire process just takes 10 times longer. And in order to really be good in this field, not just, you know, in this industry in general, like you have to be able to understand how to communicate with both types of people.
And that's hard too, especially whenever you get that one uncle that comes and talks to him at a barbecue and they just start talking with them and they're like, hey, by the way, blah, blah, blah. And you're like, really? Like, why are you going to listen to the uncle? So it's like just having to combat that kind of stuff. That's what I had to deal with, just like on the personal side of things. So we've got our house still listed, going into like that 90-day fear or that 90-day zone. And my wife is constantly like, nobody wants to buy our house. And I'm like, honey, that's not the situation. Like, there's lots of people that want to, but there's just a lot of people that are afraid to. So I'm like, you just kind of have to like, just constantly remind her like, hey, like the process is there. It will happen for the right person to walk in. I was like, but it like, you just have to constantly like, well, we had one showing where the client or like potential person came in and they were like, the air ducts weren't clean, so we're not buying the house. Like, did you crawl up in the freaking attic and go look at air ducts? Like, what is wrong with this? And so like, then we got the air ducts clean, and then I'm just like it's just little things. And so I think people just like have to like nitpick because they're afraid of their own personal pieces inside of buying a house. So I'm like, you know, there's always a fear there. So it was just having to deal with that on this side of it now.
So. I think that's why I think I could speak for a lot of my clients to say that that's why they like working with me, because I don't just assume that they know one way or the other. I'm going to be prepared to have that conversation with them regardless. So if they come to me and they're like, oh yeah, we already know, like, cool, you just saved me 30 minutes, but I was ready. Like, you know, so because, and you know, sometimes you've got the husband that feels great about it and the wife doesn't, or, you know, vice versa. And then but you still need to be prepared with the education piece to be able to speak to whatever fears they do have.
Well, and I think a lot of fear, especially in this business, is like what Payton said, where it's the unknown or it's something they've been through before and they had a really bad experience. So, and as a lender, that's our job too. Also, what she said or mentioned, that we have to educate. We have to educate not only, especially if it's a fear of buying their first home, or if it's a fear of, hey, the last home I bought was a complete crap show with this other company and this other agent. Like, what can we do to prevent that from happening again? And so it's like you're not only doing your job, but you're also being like a psychiatrist, an education specialist, a teacher, whatever. Yeah. Here's some coffee. Have a glass of wine. Like, whatever it takes to like help them combat whatever fear it is of the process. And I mean, same goes on our side as a lender. There's always that fear of, what if the buyer, even though you've warned them of everything not to do, what if they go and do that? Like, what if they go and do something crazy, like go buy, I don't know, a Porsche
too soon
and have a too soon. It's been a minute.
Yeah.
And have $1,000 monthly payment now, that you have to add in. Like, there's always that fear of like, so I mean, the stress for us is still there, and the fear is still there of like, if they do something that is out of our control, that they F it up, that blows the whole thing out of the water. So, I mean, there's always that fear in my head. Anyways, after almost 10 years in this.
Yeah. I mean, and it's, nothing that any of us do is relatable to most of the general public, right? So most of the general public can go to work from 9 to 5 or whatever their hours are, and they have their benefits and they have their salary and they're getting paid whatever. And we don't have any of those guarantees. Like, we don't have benefits. We don't have paid time off. We don't get vacation days, sick days. We don't get any of that stuff. We definitely don't get paid. Like, we get paid when something hits the closing table, right? But then everybody else, government down, also has their hand out asking for their portion of it. So it's not a relatable process in any form. So then you have a lot of people who are interested in wanting to get into our field, the fear of the unknown, of not understanding, how does all this work? Who all is going to take the money? What if it doesn't close? Do I owe people more money? Like, I know things have happened, and this is a learning experience for all of us, even doing this podcast, because the way things work for me doesn't necessarily mean that's how it works on the lending side. They get paid differently. They have different rules. They have, everything is different. So, and then with Tyler, he's literally invoicing people for his time. So, and then it's up to people to do the right thing to pay you for your services.
Pay the damn invoice, jerks.
Right. So there's just so many like different layers of fear, from clients to how this whole industry is run, and what's going to happen with the settlements, all of that stuff. There's just fear everywhere.
Add on that extra fear that Megan just posted about a few days ago, where it was like, she was like, hey, like, if they don't stay in the house a year, did they take my check back or whatever?
Right.
So that alone doesn't make sense to me.
$3,800 taken.
That's just wild. Like, you did all your job. Like, you did your job.
They literally, and what's sad is, like, I mean, I'll say it, like, I had cancer. I beat the crap out of it, whatever. And I was in the hospital, so I wasn't following up like I should have been.
It doesn't matter.
Correct. And they were a past client, but they were a past client, sadly, of, I don't even care, Payton and myself, and didn't use either one. No reason, just didn't use us. But still, friends on Facebook, likes to post, whatever.
Yep.
But one payment short of 12 months of payments, and I got the clawback. So what happened is they used another real estate agent, another lender, went behind our backs. And it's always a fear. No matter if you stay in touch with people or not, like, people, it's the fear of there's no loyalty anymore in my head, and that's my biggest fear. Is even though you can still stay in touch, with people, contact them, whatever, that they go use somebody else, and that literally financially hurts multiple people in the business. So
right, because at the end of the day, that's money
from
that
our family.
Megan's company literally is coming back and saying, okay, well, those people didn't stay for 12 months, so give me your paycheck back.
Yep.
Now it doesn't work like that for me, but it does mean that because they chose to use somebody else to buy and sell, that I just missed out on 2 other paychecks. And and my whole experience with that was I was out delivering what we call pop buys, like gifts to your clients, and was literally driving to their house to deliver their pop buy, and there was a for sale sign in their yard with another agent. And
you do stuff like this all year, so it's not.
It was not a lack of me not following up. I mean, literally going to your house to give you like a a present. You're right, but it turned out to be that it was more like, oh, well, it just seemed like you guys had a lot going on personally, like with your daughter and with her cancer and yada yada yada, and and people can make whatever. It's America. You can make whatever choice you want, but those choices have huge impacts because both of us were still working our asses off, to this day throughout everything that we've gone through this year. And, I don't ever want anyone to think that they're going to get less of a service or anything from me, but they're certainly entitled to holding that own fear for themselves that they wanted a certain experience and they were scared they weren't going to get it because of whatever was going on with me personally. But I'm thankful for other people who didn't see that and didn't treat me that way, because otherwise I would be in a much worse position than I am right now. But there's fear at every corner. Like you go to sleep at night, and we always joke, like every day we wake up unemployed, but that's true. Like we truly don't know when our next paycheck is coming. We could work every day 24/7 and never sleep and also never get paid. So it's very different world than I send my husband off to work as a nurse practitioner and every other week he's bringing home a paycheck. Like that is how it is, but that's not how it works for me. So it's interesting. It's an interesting life. I love what I do, but the fear aspect of the business can be too much for people. That's for sure.
Well, and piggybacking off of that, even if people think you have too much going on, or just because they see something on social media, that's my fear too. Every time I post something, is like, is this sharing too much? Is this going to make people think that I can't do my job? If I post like, hey, I'm going to a doctor's checkup, like, please say a prayer. It's going to make people think, oh, well, she's not working, And so there's always that stupid fear when everybody goes through things in life. Like you shouldn't have the fear of posting, letting people know you're real, instead of being this fake person online. That's every day, everything's perfect. I'm, doing $1 million like this week, and it's constantly positive. Like everybody has shit going on in their lives, and you shouldn't be afraid to share it. But in this world of criticism and like people's keyboard warriors, it's a constant fear that comes across.
Well, and then that plays right into the whole imposter syndrome thing. Like, people see what they see on Facebook, see what they see on social media, and they draw their own conclusions. I had coffee with another agent here recently, and she was just like, it just looks like you're killing it, and you're just, you're doing such a great job, and you're still a great mom, and you're da-da-da. And I remember sitting there going, you have no idea. Like, and I do remember saying to her, well, I try really hard to make sure that my social media presence doesn't just give off wins, I don't
Mm-hmm.
want people to think that this is just being handed to me. And I want it to be clear that, like, I'm having to work my ass off for what I have. But I also want it to be clear that I'm not just doing this for the hell of it, that I'm doing this for the betterment of my kids and my
Mm-hmm.
family and the priorities and things that I hold in my life. But it is really hard because people kind of put you on this pedestal of like, well, you've reached this level of success or you've done so well for yourself or whatever. And I'm like, yeah, but I go home at night and my house is a disaster and I have laundry everywhere and I can't remember the last time I cooked. I've
Or a
DoorDash,
toy room.
I have a lifetime membership to DoorDash. Like, it's just, but it is what it is. Like, it
You
Yep.
just,
get
Yeah.
there's
miles.
some things that just, yeah,
Yeah.
it's just, thank God I'm not trying to buy a house right now because I don't want to talk to a loan officer about how much I'm door dashing. Like,
Right?
What is this
Yeah. What
transaction
is this
right,
fee?
$5,000 withdrawal?
right.
Uh,
Every month I see the same place.
Yep,
Yep.
yep, every
yeah.
time.
Sent a picture to all of you just a couple minutes ago. You're probably wondering what it is. Well,
Looks like
well, we were
bread.
talking about surprises, what we don't know, fear, and stuff like that. I actually made that yesterday. That's a beef Wellington. Beef Wellington is
Okay.
basically
What up,
a
Gordon Ramsay?
Oh,
beef
okay.
Wellington is a piece of
Dang.
loin that is wrapped with mushroom Bruxelles, which is basically
Yeah.
just mushrooms chopped off, and it has some onions and stuff like that in there, wrapped with puff pastry. The thing though is that I never made puff pastry like this much or like from scratch, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And while we're talking about real estate, this dish actually reminds me a lot of it. I'm gonna explain why. What's the thing that you want the most when you want to eat beef Wellington? Probably the beef, right? Probably the most
Mm-hmm.
expensive part because everything else is just flour and mushrooms. I mean, it's literally nothing else and butter. Um, but the amount of work that you put into the dough, into the farce, the mushrooms, and the work that you put to wrap this expensive piece of meat, I mean, it takes hours. I started the dough 2 days
Mm-hmm.
ago because it needs to rest. 5 hours, then 3 hours, then 3 hours, and you keep folding
Wow.
it, folding it, and because it's like pastry has like a lot of layers. It's like flaky and stuff like that. So you really want to do something good, it takes you time. And in real estate, it's kind of the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have the house,
Mm-hmm.
but we really have to work for like 30 days or maybe less if you work with us. And then you just have no idea. You wrap this thing and then you think you're ready. And then the things that you don't know is that you cannot taste it while you're cooking it. You cannot see what the seasoning is. You cannot
Mm-hmm.
see if the meat is being cooked properly. It's a huge piece of meat. And then you just
Mm-hmm.
need to get experience. And then after you've done it 2, 3, 4 times, then you realize, oh, okay, now I'm good at this, right? But
Mm-hmm.
yesterday, being my first time making beef Wellington, I messed it up. I overcooked it. I cut a piece of Wellington and then it was well done. I don't like well done meat at all. And I was so
Yeah.
disappointed at myself. I put so much work into this. And, I made sure every single part of this dish was well seasoned, and then I was just picturing in my head what the product at the end was going to be, everybody happy in the house
Mm-hmm.
eating, and then we'll be full and then talking about how wonderful this thing is. And I was disappointed at
Mm-hmm.
what I did. Right. Then Gabe comes over. He grabs a piece of this thing, and then he's like, "Holy, this thing is delicious!" Like for me, I mean, it was overcooked.
See?
But this guy, he didn't know like all the work that I put into it. He just knew. He saw
Yep.
me putting some work into it since the day before, and then he didn't care if it was overcooked or whatever. He just liked it, and that's kind of the real estate transaction. I mean, like we literally don't tell our clients everything that we go through the whole process. We don't tell them, but
Mm-hmm.
we do work a lot, right, guys? I mean, like we really put a lot
Oh
a
my
lot
God,
of work into this,
so
and we
much.
really don't know if we're going to close
Mm-hmm.
or not because they can buy an expensive vehicle the day before closing, or I mean, the house can flood one day before. I mean, it's like there are so many things that
Mhm.
we don't know what's going to happen. We just keep our mind
Mm-hmm.
positives that we're going to close on time, or we're going to close before, and then we get nervous if we push it a little bit more, right? And then our job is to not feed that much information to our clients so fear doesn't go in them. Because communication is important, yes, but why am I going to give you all this information if all I'm going to do is make things worse? Like you asking me questions at midnight, like what's going on with this. Let me just deal with it, and the people involved in this, and then I'll tell you the results. If I cannot fix it, and I'll tell you, you know what, this is what happened. But if I do fix it, you have no idea what happened. You're just happy with the product, right?
Right.
I mean, every single day it's like this. Like we wake up without knowing what's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
We really wake up not knowing if we're going to have a job, we're going to have an income or things like that. And then that's where the fear comes from. We start thinking about it every single day. We just don't know. We just wake up with a mentality that everything is going to be okay. We just trust in ourselves that it's going to be okay because we're good at what we do.
Mm-hmm.
100%.
Right? I mean, Tyler is super good at what you do. Payton, you're great, excellent at what you do. Megan, you're awesome at what you do. You brought me over to CrossCountry. Brought me back.
Like,
I was about to be like, Megan, you could improve yourself.
I thought
Yeah.
that's where we were going to. I was like, oh, somebody about to get
Megan,
fired.
on the other hand,
Right. But then the loyalty part comes back. It's like that client may not go back to you. And this is what sales is about. It's rolling the dice every single time. Doesn't matter if I buy you flowers, if I
Mhm.
buy you lunch every other week.
Yeah.
You still have the chance to meet somebody else that is going to come over and offer you something better than I have. And I don't know what they're offering you. I have no idea. We just can do our best every single day. That's all we can do, and I think that's
Mhm.
all we do. And then we can just go back to bed every single day with peace of mind that we did what we could, and then we did the best.
Right.
And our morality is like here. Our ethics is like everywhere around us. You ask anybody.
I'm gonna kind of interject with something that he brought up, and that's loyalty too. And so in my field, anyone with a camera thinks they can become a photographer. Anybody, especially if they think they can put a price tag and be like, "Hey, for a 15-minute session is going to cost blah 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 blah." And so in our field, we call that the race to the bottom. And so it's constantly having to look. And so this is where a lot of my anxiety comes from. So, okay, walking through a typical week. Monday's great, Tuesday's great. Next thing you know, I'm scrolling on Wednesday and I see a new person want to come into town offering the same products that I do at a third of a price. And then I'll get a message to be like, hey, our shoot was booked for blah. This person says they can do it cheaper. And then my first response every single time is go use them. When you're not satisfied, contact me again. But it's now going to cost you double because you're not only going to have to pay them, but then you're going to have to pay me. So it's
to come in
just
and
a
fix it. Yep.
bingo. And so this has now happened to me about 4 or 5 times with my repeat clients that have used me for years. They'll give another person a shot and they'll call me immediately and go, I'm disappointed. I should have just stuck with you, but I wanted to give them a shot. And I always tell them, hey, give them a shot and then see what happens from there. Because everybody's got to start somewhere. And
Right.
so the thing that kills me, though, is the loyalty factor whenever I'll get a phone call from a photographer and go, hey, I'm thinking about getting in this industry. Would you teach me? And then I'll work on your team. That's now happened twice. And then I've gone through a couple of like the first steps. And then they're like, well, I no longer want to work with you or like whatever. And then I'll see them pop up and try to start offering product. That's not how this works. And so that's that loyalty factor that's hard in our industry to go, hey, I'm so overwhelmed with stuff. I'll need to bring somebody on. But it's that fear of, well, what happens if I teach them everything and then they want to leave? So that's the fear that I always have to come into a situation with is if I train somebody, then what's going to happen in the end? So I'm always having to constantly think of, is this time investment on the front end worth it for me to go, hey, like 3 or 4 months later down the road, they're not doing a good product and then they leave and then they start something on their own. So that's like my fear that I always have to get over. And so But that's just what that loyalty factor that I just want to kind of talk about back
Yeah.
to normal.
I mean, all of that is valid. And I think that kind of goes into a lot of the leverage piece that we'll talk about in a couple of weeks with Joanna when she's on. And there's so many unknowns, right? Like in
Mm-hmm.
giving up control of what you've built and having someone else kind of control your reputation and the product that you've built your life savings, time, energy, all of it. It's really nerve-wracking and it does cause a lot of fear. But there's I feel like, every industry, every job has its I mean, I could never work in retail. No. Why? Peyton's going to punch somebody. like I can handle the sales side in a very different way. But when people are, looking for their next TikTok famous opportunity to show off their Karen skills, I will come through the phone at someone. So like I know my limits. I can't handle that. And I also know that like I can't handle there's just I know what I can and can't do. I know where I thrive and where I do not. And I'm grateful for people who can handle the situations that I can't, because otherwise the world would not be moving and going around. But there's so much uncertainty. You talk about like we all have kids, we all have expectations, we're all like trying to show our kids what being an entrepreneur looks like, and that in itself is scary because it's like, do you even want to like expose your children to the craziness that comes along with this working in this type of field? Do you want them to just know what it's like to find a 9 to 5 and go work that job? But it's a beautiful expectation to I think expose your kids to. People ask me all the time if they think that oh, you think your kids are going to do the same thing as you? And I'm like, I don't know. I would love for them to, but I don't know. And I try not to go down that rabbit hole either, because then it's like, oh gosh, well, I don't want that for my kids, or I don't want them to worry or have to deal with the things that I deal with, or have to deal with the people that I deal with, or any of those things. That's a whole other side of imposter syndrome and fear. But, I think there's always, no matter what level you're at of success, whatever that means to you, you're probably always going to feel like you are not living up to somebody's expectations. I don't think that imposter syndrome ever goes away. I would be very surprised, like if I had the opportunity to chat with like Tony Robbins or something like that, if he really feels like he doesn't experience that, like I just can't imagine there being someone on the planet who's like, nope, I'm pretty much as great as I think I am. Like, I'm sure there's a narcissist somewhere, but like, those people not included. It's very interesting to me, because I think there's always going to be somebody thinking you're doing everything that I've ever wanted to do. And, and I know that it's not easy, and I know that it's not being handed to you, but like, damn, I wish I could, have the opportunities that you have, or be in the rooms of the people that you're in. And it is a good reminder, I think, sometimes to see or hear those things, because it helps you remember what's important, especially when this gets super overwhelming.
And your journey, like the steps that you've taken to get to where you're at. So
right. Because somebody just recently asked me, well, where do you think you're going to be in a few years? And I was like, okay, if you had asked me that 4 or 5 years ago, I would have been like, I'm going to be here. I'm going to do this. I'm going to have these many people. I'm going to, I had everything planned out. And I don't even know what 6 months from now is going to look like, to be totally honest with you. And I think that shows growth, if anything. Some people think that's, that feels like maybe you're going in the wrong direction. I don't think so, because now I'm more comfortable and more open to whatever that is going to come my way. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I know what works. I know what I'm confident in. I know how to work this business. I know how to do this well. And I know that if I keep doing that, success will come. I'm just not labeling it with expectations anymore because I feel
Right.
like that made the anxiety and the fear and the imposter syndrome 10,000 times worse.
100%. Well,
Well,
just think of
and
it.
I
Like
mean,
whenever Christian was going through his recipe with the beef Wellington, he had an expectation of if I follow these directions perfectly,
mhm,
not throwing in the extra factor of well, my oven actually cooks at 386 instead of 375. Like I
Right.
didn't sear the meat just right. Like there's so many extra little pieces that can come in that screw something up that you try to put into place, and you're like, well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm already off track, so why not just go ahead and like abort ship real quick and
Mm-hmm.
start all the way over?
mhm.
And so I'm constantly having to
Well,
go. No, I don't have to start all the way over.
and
Right.
fear can ignite what is it, the fight or flight. So, I mean, if you let fear overcome you, you know, you just you you shut down. You
Mm-hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
literally, mentally, physically, you don't respond. But if you let it drive you or be a driver of something that inspires you,
Mm-hmm.
because for me, like, oh my God, what if like a fear is always in our head with the economy now, especially in the market like it is, like if business slows down, what do I do? Well, you get your ass back out there, Megan, and you go hustle and
Mm-hmm.
you meet with agents, you meet with attorneys, you have lunches, you get more business. Like you can either let it break you or make you.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So I mean that's what in this business I think sets people apart from whether you're successful or you're not successful.
Right. Or if whether or not it's just like a short term growth
Right.
spurt or if you're in this
Yeah.
for the long haul
Correct.
because
Mm-hmm.
that that fight or flight will
Mhm.
paralyze you
Yeah.
and keep you from experiencing any growth
Hmm.
because there's a lot of people who are just like, oh well, I'm a high D, like I'm a driver, like I'm gonna go get it no matter what, I'm a hustler. And it's like, right, but everybody hits a wall, like at
Hmm.
some point everybody hits a wall. So
Mm-hmm.
and not being able to identify that to potentially save yourself
Hmm.
from
Hey, I'm here.
right,
Back to
right,
here. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, I think mental health is one of the most important things that we need to talk about, I guess, with ourselves every single day
Mm-hmm.
because it's
Mhm.
taking over. I mean, just fear what's going to happen tomorrow. Like Megan was saying, everything is getting so expensive. I mean, I'm not producing the same income that I used to produce, or whatever income I'm producing is not enough for tomorrow's prices. And
Mhm.
like you were saying, Payton, like all of us have hit a wall. I myself hit a wall
Mhm.
several times, but this last time it was like the thickest, tallest wall I ever hit in my life. And honestly,
Mhm.
I went through so much anxiety, depression, all at the same time. And you have kids, and then what face are you going to show to them? You know, you're
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
like that. I
Mhm.
mean, you
Yep.
Yep.
have really
Mhm.
Yep.
no idea what to do, when to do it. And there is so much that all of us deal with. And while I was going through this, I didn't understand many of the things that maybe other people was trying to suggest. You know, we're just blind and we're deaf, and we just don't want to see what we're getting ready for. And that's the process. That's what we're learning, and everybody goes through that. Doesn't matter if it's in your personal
Mhm.
life, professional life, or if it's in somebody else's life. You know, we
Mhm.
all hit a wall. Now, there is this Japanese thing that says that the most beautiful people are the people that have been broken before. And there is a story that they tell that when a person, you know when we break something, everybody says nothing is the same when you try to put it together. The Japanese culture
Mhm.
actually embraces this in a different way. When you break something, you don't glue it together just like with glue, you glue it together with gold. You become
Mhm.
more beautiful once you're put together after you've
Mm-hmm.
been broken, and then you're worth a lot more too. And just keep that in mind. Like, I know it's not every day, it's not perfect, but as long as you're there, it's going to keep getting better. It's up to you.
Mhm. Mm-hmm.
100%.
I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah, I'm right there. I love that part of their culture. So it just always makes me think too, because my favorite thing is music, and so you can always tell a singer whenever they have a story because it comes out in their songs and it comes out in their voice. So like my favorite stuff is those people that start in bars and they just totally just start working on their voice, and like by the time they hit the mainstream they have this like super raspy sounding voice and people are like, man, they got a story to tell. Yeah,
Right.
yeah, I do.
Really
Yeah.
roll.
Let me get all the way through my story and you'll see
Yeah.
the progression of how I've gotten there. So
Yeah,
but
we
no,
all have
I
a
love
song.
No.
that.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent.
Oh
I do
my
have
God,
one
you're gonna make me cry,
question
Christian. Stop it.
I know,
while
right?
we're
Like
kind of
I'm
like
sitting here like I'm not a crier,
We
but
all have a
are we
song.
all gonna be like
You're welcome.
crying?
That's like the motto for this.
exactly.
We all have a
I
song.
got. It's okay. You can tell me it's too personal. So
Oh God.
whenever you walked in for your first scan and they said you have cancer, did they go, hey, you have X number of days, you should go ahead and get all your affairs in order? Did they ever bring that up?
Um. So when I found out, it was from a biopsy under my eye, and it was 4 days later, which my husband got fired for going to that appointment with me and didn't tell me until after because he didn't want me to know, because they said you can go with her or you can work, and he already knew something was,
Not right.
yeah, and obviously we all did. I mean, that Sunday I felt lumps in my breast, like in the shower when he had the kids at church, so I knew something was going on. So Tuesday morning is when we found the results, and the doctor literally came in and said, "Well, it's not what," because he's ancient. I mean,
Yeah.
ancient, and the head of the department for ocular plastic surgery at Emory. So big deal, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Like, seen it, dealt with it. I'm sure it was nothing to him, but he actually cared, which weirdly, whatever. But literally, Scott and I were sitting there waiting on him to come in for the results, and he literally walked in the room and said, "Well, not what we wanted to, find out, but you have cancer." And I was like, "Huh?"
Mm-hmm.
Come again? Yeah.
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 And literally, Scott and I, my husband, just looked at each other like, "What the
Mm-hmm.
just happened?" And he tried to I mean, the poor doctor tried to comfort me, but there was no comforting.
Moment. Yeah.
So he's like, "I'll just give y'all, a few minutes." And he came back, literally put in like a 911 referral to the hospital because he's like, "I think it's leukemia. I just want to confirm." And so literally that night they called and said, "We're getting you a room. We'll call tomorrow to discuss further steps, whatever." But nothing was said. I didn't know what kind. I didn't know, any other information. So the fear of like, fuck, is this going to kill me? Is this,
Yeah.
we got 2 little kids. What the hell is going to happen? Am I going to go home and die? Like I'm obviously lost my hair, but I mean, like all the things come over you.
I feel like those first 48 hours.
Yeah. And
finding
I
out
really,
hard.
I mean, I went home. I drank probably 3 bottles of wine, like didn't sleep, terrified, slept by the kids, and just all I could do was stare at them
Mm-hmm.
because I'm like, oh my God, if I literally, like every fear goes through your head, especially with little babies. At that time, they were 2 and 4. And I'm just looking at them going, oh my God, like if I'm not here tomorrow, like what? I don't have anything like lined up. I mean, I haven't life insurance. I have all that, but I didn't have a will. I didn't have, the last thing you think of is when you're healthy and running and gunning and 38 or 37 at the time. Like, last thing you think about is you're going to get cancer.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, so
I don't think the words, at least from what you've always shared with me, I don't think the words from any of your medical team were ever very like super negative. I don't think anybody ever spoke very like, this is it. Like,
luckily, I literally had young kid, like I call them kids. They were young. 33 was my oncologist, And he sat down that next day at Emory called at 8:30 a.m. So I felt fantastic after 3 bottles of wine to say like, hey, we got a room. I mean, and we got there and within 36 hours they had answers. And to hear him say, literally my oncologist was like, there's a plan. We're going to get this. It's curable. It's treatable. You're going to be okay. It's a long road.
Right.
But you're going to be okay. And that's all I needed.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
I mean, that and my faith, obviously, but to hear there was a plan and not just like, well, this is what you have, like, have fun. Don't poop on the carpet.
Is that what the doctor said?
No. They're done.
Congratulations, Megan. You have cancer. Please stop shitting on the
don't
carpet.
poop on the carpet.
After 3 bottles of wine. I mean,
Yeah, probably did.
oops.
I literally
I was-
warned them the next day. I was like, please don't draw my blood.
Yeah, please don't draw my blood.
Might
It's
not
probably
ever-
just wine at this
Yeah.
point.
so much alcohol in your
Might not
blood.
ever get
It's
it.
like,
Oh,
I
man.
haven't had that much since then. But yeah, that was a big fear of mine. Like, is there a time limit? Is there,
Mhm.
I mean, all those fears go through your head.
Just the fear of the unknown.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, right in the beginning of, okay, well, we know it's bad, but we
Yeah.
don't know why.
Right.
We know it's clearly on your face. We
Yeah.
knew it had spread because you
Yeah.
could feel it in other areas,
Bad.
but
Yeah.
we didn't know anything. And, experiencing it even from a friend perspective is like
Well,
terrifying.
you were one of my first phone calls, I think.
Yeah.
After I shot a glass of wine.
Right. Yes. But it, still just like,
Yeah.
thinking about it right now, like gives me chills because I'm like, that's not something that 1, you're ever prepared for, but 2, that you can even process to know what that level of fear, or how do you even breathe in that moment, let alone like figure out how to keep going. But then you look around and you're like, okay, I have to keep myself focused on my kids and my family and my faith and the things that keep me going every day.
That was my main thing. Like I said, I'm trying not to get emotional, but like literally my doctor was like, not only have you, because I'm such a CrossFit freak, like it's just my outlet of like getting anxiety and fear out, I'm assuming is that's my outlet for like getting this crap, that we deal with in these professions, you have to have some kind of outlet. So CrossFit is mine. And then my oncologist was like, you literally have been preparing your body for this to fight.
Mm-hmm.
But my true drive of fighting was these two little, I mean, two little like, sweet babies.
Sweet babies.
Look at them.
So of a reason, is my, I'm sorry, I got fake hair in my mouth. But that everybody has a reason, and my reasons are those now 3 and 5-year-olds, because I could have just said, they had me on the most progressive treatment plan with chemo. I was going at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. 1 week it was 5 times a week for chemo, and then showing up at event. That last day somehow got my crap together. But there's always a reason of something that drives you, and mine are those 2 little ones. And I could have, like I said, just literally like laid in bed, shut work off, called in FMLA, whatever, and just said, fuck it. I mean, beat me, whatever you got to do. But I didn't. And there was something in me that said, like, do not stop. Like, do not stop. Pass through this and you'll get through it. It's going to suck. It's going to be hard, but it's also going to teach you things along the way. And it has. I mean, not only do I appreciate things more, even though they drive me nuts, I love those babies with everything I have. God, they drive me nuts.
Don't you love how two things can be true at the same time?
Woo, Lord, this weekend tested the Jesus in me. But and it teaches you how to also trust your partner. So like my husband had to take over things, and the fear of like when I was in the hospital, my biggest fear was like, oh my God, is somebody going to are they going to be okay? Is Hannah going to have a hair bow in? Are they going to eat something other besides Chick-fil-A? And to literally like trust in other people also. I mean, that's something else that I've had to learn instead of just because I'm such a control freak. But literally this has made me realize that I have to give control to other people. I can't do it all myself. So that's been a huge thing too.
Yeah, fun. I mean, not funny, but curious. The fact that you tell this story, and then that when this happened, it actually sounded like a really sad story. And then now that I've been reading a little bit more about the Bible and everything else, I realize this is actually a really happy story. Because just like you said, I mean, the doctor told you that you actually been preparing yourself for this. What happens to all of that people that are actually don't prepare themselves? I mean, like literally, you were ready to get this because this was one more wall that you had to break, and then it was a wall that you broke. So I think that that's impressive, and I think that, like you said, your faith, got you going. And not a lot of people acknowledge on social media or whatever. I don't know what it is, but there is God. there there is his hand pushing you. He got you ready way before anybody knew it, way before the doctors knew.
And and get this. So I got this tattoo. I think I told Payton. I saw it on TikTok. Literally, I will never be that person that was like, "Oh, that's so cool. I want it." But there is this girl.
I will. I'll be that person.
Yeah. I probably will. It's fine. I lie. It's okay. I don't lie, but I probably will be one day. Well, I just did.
No
So I
regrets.
mean, I got it. But Lindsay, I think her last name is Girk or Gurky, something out of Nashville. She's a mom of young kids, but she's Christian, big time Christian girl. But she does song parodies, and then she'll like tell stories of her toddlers and reenact them herself. So
she's hilarious.
Oh my God, she's incredible. And she's like, I want to meet her so badly. But her quote that she said forever was, I will get there. Like, I'm not where I want to be. I'm not where I know God wants me to be, but I will get there. And she went into this whole like discussion about it on these TikToks. And then what did I get? This was like 3 years ago. I don't know if you can see it. It says I will get there. And so this happened before all of this. And then literally every day I woke up in that hospital after the bone marrow transplant, I would literally look at my arm because you see it when you wake up. Like, I mean, it's literally right there. And I'm like, not only was I preparing my body for this, but God also knew, yeah, I know some people are against tattoos. I'm sorry if you are. Don't mean to offend you. But I'm like, that's a funny reminder every single morning that it sucks right now, but I will get there. So, I mean, fear, I mean, it's always driven me. There are days that nobody's perfect. I'm not going to sit here and say it's never frozen me, because it has. This shit will freeze you. Like,
that's why you had 3 bottles of wine.
Yeah. There's days when you go in for a CT scan and you're paranoid because all you can think about is, oh my God, what if there's something else, or if there's a new mass, or if there's something they didn't see. So, I mean, you can let it paralyze you, or you can let it drive you. And I refuse to let it permanently paralyze me. That's just not going to happen.
Yep. I think the perfect way to like wrap up this whole thing is just to talk about the fact that it's not finding the thing that drives you is truly like your ticket out, right? but also figuring out what brings you peace and understanding that even if you were like the most hardcore hustler there is, that your mental health is still important.
Mm-hmm.
That, like, Christian, I'm so glad you said that earlier, because one of my friends that I met, like, growing up, that was not something that was talked about. It was not something that was normalized. It was not something like going to therapy and like talking about your feelings, like, just wasn't something that was normal in the house that I grew up in. But I feel like it was just kind of like generationally not prioritized as well. I think a lot of millennials feel that way, but when I was an adult, like, already had children, had been married for 10 plus years, met one of my best friends that's still an amazing person in my life, and she literally looked at me one day and was like, Payton, you realize that, like, it's okay for you to, like, be okay with the fact that you clearly have anxiety, right? And I was like, excuse me? Please stop talking so loud, because nobody asked you to yell at me. But she was like the first person that gave me permission to accept that about myself, and to accept the fact that, like, it's okay to find and seek out help and talk to somebody about it. And it's not a weakness. It can definitely be a superpower, but it's okay. And just for somebody to tell me that it was okay, like, opened up a whole new world for me, to make it okay to talk about mental health. And I've just made it not necessarily like a crusade, but it's important to me for people to know that you don't have to have your shit together. Like, you can go and kill whatever is important to you and feel like a total disaster, because I'm going to be real honest, that's how I feel every day. And, but as long as you figure out what your priorities are and what's important to you and what drives you and what keeps you focused, that's where your success comes from, because that's where you're going to overcome things. It in no way, shape, or form did any of the four of us sitting here feel like we have our shit together. No. We all have things that we're struggling with, but, like, it's because we surround ourselves with good people, and we give ourselves permission to not be perfect and to be totally okay with that. And, it's a magic combination of a lot of things, but it all goes down to understanding that perfection is not where it's at, and embracing who you are and using those things to the best of your ability and not being ashamed of it. I think that releases a lot of fear, which is an incredible place to be. So,
Love it.
Final thoughts?
Just surround yourself with good people. You got to find your tribe. So, like, that's the key. That's the key.
Yep. Find your outlet.
Yes.
Or it could be a creative outlet, or if you need to go smash some shit, there's places around here.
Don't drink 3 bottles of wine. Don't let the.
Yeah, let's stay away from the 3 bottles of wine thing. But
yeah, make it 2, and then you can add something else.
Then invite people over.
Yeah, change is good.
I love it.
That's it. Well, that about wraps up episode 25. Hopefully, you've got some tips, some tricks, at least a little insight to how we overcome fear in this shitty ass world of imposter syndrome that we all get into sometimes. But
that's right.
Yeah, so that wraps up this episode. Y'all stay tuned. Every Tuesday we come out with new content. So yes, it'll be real estate focused, but it's also going to be every once in a while just a little bit of life that comes in here too. Tune for the next one. See ya.
See ya. Bye.